The following audio may contain the personal testimonials of some Optavia coaches or clients of Optavia. The results relayed in these messages are based on the unique experiences of the participants, and we cannot guarantee like or similar outcomes. While you may be inspired by these accounts, please note that any stories of success have not been verified and your individual path to optimal health will vary. As always, it is our recommendation that you consult with a healthcare provider before starting a weight loss program. Yours in health, the Optavia team.
Welcome everybody to our Habits of Health webinar. We'll give everybody a moment to kind of pop in. And in the chat, if you want to say hi and say where you're from, where you're tuning in from tonight, we'd know we come in from all across the country. So super excited to see where you guys are all tuning in from tonight. All right, we got a good group too. So, well, tonight we are taking on the topic of emotions and food. So something I think we can all relate to. And what I love is that we're taking on breaking the cycle of emotional eating. And I love that everybody, this is really just a journey. Everybody falls off track at some point in their journey. So it's really not a question if, like we will, it's really a question of when and what we're gonna do with that. And what I love about our community is that we're really about creating new habits, really about no shame and no guilt, but really also about shedding light on a topic such as emotional eating. You know, and because it's a real thing for some of us may not identify with this, some of us identify with it more than others, but what we want to do is bring awareness to it. We want to bring education to it, but most of all tonight, I desire to bring some tools, and I've got some great, brave women to share tonight too, their stories, their testimonies, where we want to just give you guys a really healthy toolbox to help you move through this cycle of emotional eating. So, if you have ever eaten, I just love to kind of get like a gauge here. If you have ever eaten anything from an emotion other than hunger, could you just drop a 1 in the chat? Okay, I'm kind of seeing like it's blowing up, which just means like we can all relate to the topic, and there's the whole spectrum here. But I'm so glad that you're joining us. But first, I want to share a little bit about me. Should introduce myself. My name is Susan LaBelle. I don't have any fancy letters after my name. Maybe you're asking like, how is she qualified to speak on this topic? I'm not a behavioral therapist. I'm not a counselor. I haven't necessarily been trained from a textbook style of how to work with people through this process. But you know what? I have been on the battlefield and in the trenches working with people in the last 8 years, people that want to create health, people that feel maybe stuck where they are in life, and they want to break free of that vicious cycle of emotional eating. So we personally have worked with over 1,300 people. So my stories, my testimonies, my maybe thoughts have really just been through experience of human to human contact, and helping people, you know, overcome and create, you know, optimal health in their life. So here's my journey, me in my 20s. I honestly didn't identify as an emotional eater. I was more of the, I'm just big boned, and I just have really bad genes. So I had actually just a lot of excuses. Maybe I was in denial, would be a good way to put it. And then in my 30s, I was filled with a whole bunch of more excuses with having kids and pregnancy and hormones and busy life and all of that. And then, you know, I found Optavia. It came into my world, and what was different for me is it provided me a structure to really focus on what I wanted, to create healthy habits, to create a healthy mind, and it allowed me to give me space to be honest with myself. And when I really got honest with myself, there were some things that I hadn't dealt with in life, and I was using food to cover up some of those uncomfortable, unhappy feelings. And so this just allowed me a space to kind of tackle what that was head on, create some different habits. And I turned 40 2 months ago, and I'm excited to rock out a new decade, kind of free from that like vicious cycle, kind of entering the victory circle of creating a healthy relationship with food. And it's been a lifelong journey after decades of oscillating in my health, and excited to kind of share what has really worked well for me as I've kind of implemented little tools along the way. I'm by no means perfect. I still have slip-ups every now and then, but I think that I'm better than I was. And if we can, I stand in that space of gratitude and just want to move forward. So let's talk about this cycle. Because like I said, it's really about awareness and understanding it. And once you can identify it and you can identify where you are in it, we can give you the tools to get out of it. So like I said, I was unaware I was even in it. And then once I realized I was in it, I was able to kind of make the decision that that's not where I wanted to stay any longer. So the first is really a trigger or an emotional response. So it could be a bad breakup, it could be a stressful day at work, it could be a really yucky email. And what we do is we internalize that feeling, and that we kind of get this energy inside of us, and we make this decision to cover up that feeling. Now, there's a lot of ways people can cover up feelings. It can look like alcohol, it can look like drugs, it can look like shopping. I mean, there's a lot of ways, but for today's purposes, we're going to talk about the cover up of food. And what's been really fascinating to me in working with people is that food's become this really socially acceptable way to actually cover up our emotional, triggers that we have in life. In fact, I have a 9 and 11-year-old, and I see that when they have, it's like, oh, you lost your soccer game, like, let's go get an ice cream, or, oh, you won your soccer game, we should go celebrate with ice cream. Like, we almost ingrain it culturally into our kids from a young age that food is an acceptable way to deal and process emotion. So once we have that cover up, a lot of the foods that we choose are high in sugar, they're high in fat. And what that does is that occupies a lot of digestive energy. And that puts us in this phase where we kind of have this false sense of bliss. And I like that word because that's all that dopamine. It's actually a physiological response where for a moment, kind of like immediately after, we have this high. You eat that ice cream, you get this high from all that processed sugar, and you're like, quote unquote, like comforted for a moment in time. And it kind of reinforces that decision of why you wanted to cover up that trigger, that emotional response in the first place. But that high doesn't last very long, and it kind of leads you to this space that I like to call the hangover. It's both physical and emotional. It can be, from an emotional place of like guilt and shame, but there's also the physical discomforts that come along with choosing foods that don't really support our health, and have our body, work at an optimal level. So all that combined ends up putting us into a place where we have more triggers and more emotions, and the cycle continues. Can anyone relate to that feeling? And so comfort foods don't necessarily make us comfortable, and it leads us sometimes into a place of regret and shame. And I can think back to seasons of my life where I honestly felt stuck. Like, I didn't know I was even there, and I didn't even know it was a cycle. And then when I was aware of the cycle, I didn't know how to get out of it. So that's what we hope to give to you today. And before I bring my friends on, I just want to kind of bring up, because it's so pivotal, the trigger is that powerful part. It's what gets us into the cycle. Okay, so it's the entry, it's your front door, it's that entry point, and it's different for everybody. I bet you guys maybe the chat, I see the chat blowing up. Maybe you're sharing, some of you are really open about this, and know exactly what your triggers are. And that's where it starts, is becoming aware, is what are your triggers and emotions. And this just takes a moment of pause and being really mindful and being aware of what you're actually feeling. So I love acronyms. I love things that are like, can quickly come to mind when we're in that moment where we're, trying to decide, like, am I hungry, like truly hungry, or am I just craving? So I love this because I can go through blast. Okay, so that's my word for you. And you can say that to yourself, and you can go, am I bored? Am I lonely? Am I angry? Am I stressed? Am I tired? So you can kind of identify, what am I actually feeling right now? And in that moment of pause, if it's boredom, food will give you a 5-minute, period of that false bliss, but you're still bored. So what are some other things you can do? It's about creating tools for yourself, like, going and, and I see my kids do this. Like, sometimes they're standing around, like, looking, and I'm like, they're just really bored. So it's kind of identifying what are they really feeling in the moment. Or stress. There's so many other productive ways to deal with stress, like yoga and meditation and exercise that actually support your goal of being healthy. I could go on and on, but really it's about identifying what am I feeling, and what are some healthy habits that I can do that will give me actually the results I want, that will keep me focused on my highest value, my highest choice, my fundamental choice of choosing health in my life. Because food, and if you've ever been in the cycle, you know that immediately after, sure, we feel good for a bliss moment, and then the hangover hits, and you actually haven't solved any of these feelings. In fact, they leave you sometimes worse than where you started. So with that, I do want to bring on two women, but first I want to start with my friend Joanna. And what I love is we've traveled together and we've hung out. And when I shared with her I was going to be sharing on this topic tonight, she's like, I want to share my story. And what's so fascinating is we don't always talk about this with people that we know and love. And I had no idea this was part of her story and her journey. And so thank you for being brave tonight and sharing your, also just your path and your journey towards healing. So Joanna, take it away.
Thanks, Susan. Okay, so I went on this journey towards health, or started my journey towards health, a little over 3 years ago. So here's what you need to understand. I'm a mama of 6, and 3.5 years ago, my husband at the time had been battling a chronic, debilitating illness that left me taking care of him and those kids on my own. And so you can imagine there was quite a lot of stress going on. And I'd like to say that was where my stress eating began, but it's like Susan said, began a long, long, long time ago, back when you're sitting in the back of the car and you're crying and mom starts chucking, Cheerios back at you. But over time, then I was a latchkey kid. I was home by myself in the afternoons. I was lonely, and me and Oreos became best friends. And over time, whenever I was bored, me and Ben and Jerry had some serious affairs. And so all throughout the years, this was a pattern that was building in me. So now I'm at this peak of just significant stress, financial stress, emotional stress, fear. And I literally would go and hide from my kids and eat large amounts of anything. It didn't even have to be Ben and Jerry's or Oreos. It could be spoonfuls of peanut butter, nuts, crackers, anything to get me to the point where I was beyond full. Because you know what? There was just emptiness inside me. Anything, any of the triggers like stress, boredom, it leaves an emptiness, and emptiness calls to be filled. And I kept running to food to fill me. Bottom line, emptiness calls to be filled. And so I needed to go on a journey. I needed some serious neurohacking. And so what I loved about Optavia for me was that it gave me the food structure. And for a season, it was like training wheels, because the nutrition was taking care of me, so I could start dealing with the brain part. I could start changing the way I think, because we could lose 300 pounds, but if we don't change the way we think, we're not going to transform. And isn't it beautiful? Isn't it wonderful that that our brains are neuroplastic and that they can change just like the muscles on your body? And so I want to share with you a little bit about that process that I went through. And so first of all, it started with me understanding my brain. I don't know if you know this, but we actually have 2 parts to our brain, and I like to refer to them as my upstairs and my downstairs brain. So the upstairs part of my brain, that's the part of the brain that makes decisions for me. That's the part of the brain that has my voice, that has my words, okay? That's the logic part of my brain. So then you've got the downstairs part of your brain. That's your fight, fright, or flight. That's the part of the brain that has been solely designed by God to protect you, to keep you safe when there's danger, to make you survive. So here's where this gets tricky. Our downstairs brain doesn't know the difference between a Mack truck coming at you and depression or loneliness or boredom. It can't tell the difference. All it's sensing is danger, and its job is to help you survive. So immediately it fires off, must get you to survive. And we, over time, because again, throughout life, eating fired eating gave us a sense of relief, our brains have learned, our downstairs brain has learned, oh my goodness, when she eats, she is relieved. When he eats, he is relieved. I have done my job. Well done, downstairs brain. Does that make sense? So now you have this well-worn pathway in your brain. Think of it as a dirt road in your brain. It's this deep, deep, when a car keeps going over in the same spot on a dirt road, it leaves these ruts. So you've got this deep rut in your brain now that says, when I'm bored, when I'm sad, when I'm lonely, when I'm triggered, food will satisfy. Food will fix this. Food will give me relief. And so I just want you to be aware of that, because a lot of this is not your fault. A lot of this is, there is a well-worn pathway. But here's the good news. Just like I said earlier, you can neurohack. You can transform your brain. Your brain is neuroplastic and it can change. We can develop new neural pathways. So I want to be able to talk to you about neurohacking in just a minute, but I want to just, while I'm getting on to the next point, write some of your triggers. Triggers can be anything, like we talked about the general, but it could be something as simple as, oh my gosh, my kids were fighting this morning, or oh my goodness, we have bills that we can't pay. So write some triggers in there, because I want to go in a little bit farther into this, and I want to talk about how these triggers actually cause us to start believing lies. So now we have this well-worn pathway in our brain. Like I said, it satisfies. I feel better. I've eaten. I'm happy. So we start believing these lies that if I eat, I will be happy. If I eat, I will be filled. If I eat, life will be better. So again, we start routinely believing lies, and they become, again, more neural pathways. So let's talk about this. Now we kind of understand our brain. So let's talk about how we can actually hack our brain, what we can do to undo some of this. Y'all, number one is this. We must be clear, crystal clear on our why. And I don't mean, oh, I just want to lose 50 pounds. I mean, when I lose 50 pounds, I will be running a marathon. I will be fitting into that bikini. I will. And I even challenge you to take it a step further. Take it to step yourself. If you need to lose 50 pounds, take yourself 5 months into the future and create I am statements. I am down 50 pounds. I am wearing a bikini. I have energy. I'm playing outside with my kids. I feel like a boss because I've taken control of my food issues. Write I am statements and smack them on your mirror right where you brush your teeth. And the challenge is to read them out loud. As silly as this sounds, again, if we're talking neurohacking, these are the things that need to happen. Read it out loud, because it lights up this upstairs part of your brain when you read it out loud. And now you've created a picture in your mind's eye of what you're contending for. Because here's the beauty in all this. At the end of the day, we steer where we stare. Just like a little kid on a bike, if a little kid, my children, we were on a bike ride this last week, and we're all biking down the road, and it's a scene seeing eight people bike down the road. We're biking down the road, and all my child looks over at the store over there. I was like, right off the road. You steer where you stare. So we need a clear picture of what we're contending for, and I challenge you to say it out loud every day, because again, that starts your day with lighting up that front part of your brain. Okay, so now we're going into the day, and all of a sudden you hit that point in the day where you have that craving, and you know what I'm talking about. It's this non-rational, out of control, oh my gosh, if I don't get to that pantry and load my face down, I might die. And I know what I'm talking about. So that starts coming over. What are we going to do? How are we going to battle this? Because it's impulsive. It's uncontrollable. So these are some things I'm going to challenge you to do. Number one is I want you to know what your exit strategy is. I want you to know what your one thing is going to be. Mine is cucumbers. Yep, it's cucumbers. So what I mean by that is I have little baggies of cucumbers sliced up in my fridge for when I have my lizard brain, downstairs brain moments. And I have made a challenge to myself and with an accountability partner that when I get into that crazy out of control spot in my brain, I am going to beeline it over to those cucumbers and start eating cucumbers, because Lord knows I will not binge on cucumbers. And I'm going to give myself pause and a moment, like Susan said earlier, to start paying attention, asking myself again out loud, what's going on and what am I feeling? What's happening? What do I really need? Am I needing rest? Am I tired? Do I need endorphins? Do I maybe need to sit down and do 15 squats? Am I needing to get some fresh air? What am I really needing? Because if you notice, all those triggers that you guys are saying in the chat have nothing to do with physical hunger. Food won't satisfy. Food will never satisfy an emotional emptiness. Ever, 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 ever. So my first challenge is to know your exit strategy. Your one thing, it could be a glass of water. It could be cucumbers, but know your one thing that's going to be your exit strategy to get you to a place where you can start challenging yourself. Ask yourself in that moment out loud, will this decision move me closer to that person, those I am statements that I'm contending for, or will it move me farther away? The key is saying it out loud, y'all, because again, when we speak out loud, it lights up that front part of your brain and it starts moving you out of the downstairs. Having that water, having my cucumbers gives me a second to come back into a state of logic. And then you can make a decision. Okay, so will it always be perfect? No, it won't. But let me tell you this, that my greatest growth through this season of overcoming my struggles with food have not been in my victories, but have been in my failures. And so, my precious friend, I have to say this to you. Don't allow the failures to cause you to curl up, turtle, and give up. Because this is where you have an opportunity to grow and to learn. You have a choice when you stumble on this journey to run in shame and throw yourself a pity party. And pity parties stink because they demand for more food. And it's an entertainment party that demands for more food, which ends up leaving you more empty. So, you have a choice for pity parties, or we have a choice to say, I am going to become curious. I am going to learn about myself. I am going to ask myself questions so I can learn, even if I just grow by a 0.5% for the next time. Because you see, if you keep growing by 0.5%, over time, that's going to add up big time. So here are the questions I've learned to ask myself. The first thing I ask myself when I have my trip ups is, what happened? That's it. Without shame, without blame. Can you do that? Have you practiced doing that? Asking yourself, what happened? Well, yesterday when I had a trip up, what happened was I was lonely. I was feeling just like unlovable. And I went beelining it straight to the pantry. That's what happened. Okay, what was I feeling? Again, I was feeling loneliness. I was feeling overwhelmed. I actually went and journaled it. Journaling is another great way to kind of flush out what you're feeling. The next thing I asked was, what was missing? I'll tell you what was missing. My cucumbers were missing. In that moment, my cucumbers were missing. I didn't have my exit strategy in place. I didn't go to my defaults. I have a person I text when I start having that crazy part in my brain. So, okay, so now what's next? Well, next time you better darn well believe will have my cucumbers cut up. You better darn well believe I'm going to make that text message. You better darn well believe I'm going to ask myself those questions before I make the decision. There is so much beauty in this process because, again, it's imperfect progress. It's not perfection. And the growth can happen even in the trip ups. And I want to remind you of this. Even when you trip up, you're only one choice from being back on the path towards health and towards your goals. So keep contending for yourself, keep growing, even if it's by 0.5%, keep moving forward because you can do this. You have been given the power to be able to change your brains and change the way you think. That's it.
Wow. Joanna, you're just going to have to go back and read the chat. It is beyond blowing up. People are inspired. They're encouraged. They're feeling like hopeful. And I think that's what our desire was for everyone tonight is to relate and realize you're not alone. And that, but also give you some tools. And Joanna, so much here, so many golden nuggets. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm honored to bring on another friend of mine, Sam. Same thing. We've traveled the world together. We've been friends, and it's so great to connect on this level, hear your story of, same thing, freedom and victory that we've, where we were, where we are, and where we're going. Sam, excited for you just to share and continue the conversation.
Hey guys, well, oh my God, like boom, Susan and Joanna bringing down the house. I don't know how much more I can tell you guys, but to share a little bit of my story. And I actually just want to give you 3 tips real quick before I do that. And these 3 words are going to be community, structure, and well, this is more than one word, but feel all the feels, guys. So look, I'm one of 7 kids, okay? Basically, I grew up in poverty, and I have memories of standing in the government line for food with my mom. And, I also am number 5. So that means that the food disappeared before I could get my little hands on it sometimes. I developed bad habits early on, just like my friend Joe, just like my friend Susan, and these things definitely carried on into my adult years. Now, once you take bad habits and you apply adult stress to it, things can get crazy. So in fact, I am, my previous life was in the fitness industry. And a lot of people think, wow, how lucky are you? You are in the gym, you can work out whenever. How lucky you are. That's such a great accountability resource. And honestly, for me, it was more about vanity in that industry, at least for where I was. And although, I got into competitive bodybuilding figure competitions, that actually, I entered that season thinking that that was going to help me with my problems and food. That was going to help me take my body and my habits to the next level. And you know what, guys? All it was this fleeting 12 weeks of preparation. I had some pretty cool pictures of me with a 6-pack. But you know what? I gained 15 pounds back in 1 week doing that. And every single show, that was the same thing. And every single show and the years and years in personal training, those habits, those bad habits, they got stronger. So when I became a mommy and I came home from a long day of work to 2 toddlers and not knowing what was for dinner and a husband that was human and cranky sometimes too, you know what I did after everybody went to sleep? I hid in the pantry. And that was my cycle for many years. And Susan said it so right. When we get in this stage, we're often riddled with regret and shame, and that process for me, I found myself always feeling very overwhelmed with the emotions that I felt. Something that I never learned to do was to process what I was feeling, to process it, just to feel it and allow myself to go through those emotions. But because you know what, we're adults, we're supposed to have the solutions, we're supposed to know what to do right when, you know what, sometimes we don't. Sometimes things take time. And, going to food became that easy way out for me to not have to accept that I was struggling. I had a hard day. I didn't have the answer. I messed up. I was less than perfect. And that's kind of like the end of my story. I realized eventually that I didn't have to be perfect anymore. And in fact, it was when several years ago, I hopped on one of these awesome Zooms and I heard a health coach that I admired, a beautiful coach, and admit and just share with everyone that she had this problem too. And I realized I had been stuffing this problem down because I thought I was a personal trainer, I had to be perfect, and I couldn't admit to my husband or anyone that I was having these issues. I stuffed that down and it allowed the beast to grow until that moment someone gave me permission to realize there was nothing wrong with me at all. And so for all of you on tonight, I hope that you understand that you're human. And that's my kid. And you know what? This is life. Allow yourself to feel, to process, to lean into the community. And the structure part, I had to allow myself to take our program and bring it into my life to give me the structure that I needed amidst the chaos. And when I allowed myself that grace to actually accept help via the fuelings, via a coach, via our community, I was free, guys. Once a yo-yo queen that could lose the 15 pounds but never keep it off, all the years since, I have never gained it back. So I know that some people have been touched tonight, and just handing it back to you, Susan, and you guys take it away.
That was awesome, Sam. Thank you guys so much. You know what I love is that I think there's this thought because we're health coaches, we've got it all figured out. And I don't know about you ladies, and trust me, this isn't just a woman thing either. There's plenty of men I could have called on to share tonight. This is a human thing. And because we live in this world. And as a health coach, our desire is really just to come, sometimes we find so much purpose in our pain. And so we've been there, and sometimes the person that can stand on that cliff alongside you is the person that has experienced that same emotion and that same feeling. And so as a health coach, it's not that we've got it all figured out or that we're perfect. It's just that we desire to kind of get out of our own way and because someone's helped us, decide to extend our reach and help others. So Optavia, you guys, we are your healthy toolbox here. And what I love is many people come into wanting optimal health, really seeing that vision of a healthy body. And we're quick to find out that there's a thread that's connected between the healthy body, the healthy finances, and the healthy mind. And tonight was very much about that healthy mind component. Like one really can't be without the others. They're all, kind of like a well-oiled machine and work together. And so our desire is to help you through all of that through our 4 components. And you have access to your health coach. You guys have access to the community, to the habits of health, and also our fueling programs. And if you're not accessing all 4 of our components, you can see they all are about 25% of what's offered to you. So if you're just really focused on your amazing, awesome fuel plan and utilizing your coach, but you haven't cracked open your habits of health and you haven't plugged into your community, you're only accessing 50% of what we have available to you. So I really want to encourage you to go all in, go 100% in, utilize all of what Optavia has available, to you. And as we kind of wrap up tonight, what our desire was, as we kind of came together for this call, was to, like I said, bring awareness, bring education to the cycle, and to release any sort of shame, guilt, but also to really empower you all that you don't have to stay where you are. Maybe you identify with being an emotional eater, but I want to challenge you to choose a different identity. You heard 3 empowered women tonight. And it's been, right, a path and a journey. I can see the ladies on the line. We're all like, it was a choice. We choose to identify with empowerment, with being mindful, being present, being victorious in this, to not be, to not struggle and to be defined by that. And we want to have a healthy relationship with food. So we are creating a new identity for ourselves. We threw a lot of stuff at you, and there's not one way to do this, okay? You may need to listen to this call multiple times. You're going to grab something different based on the season that you're in and where you're at. But our desire is to really encourage everybody. This is not for just Sam and Joanna and myself. This is for everybody. If you choose to really, you can break free of those chains that bind you, and this does not have to be where you stay. So with that, I want to thank Sam and Joanna and all of you for joining us tonight. I hope you took one thing away that will help you live your optimal life and help you create more freedom in your health. So thank you, everybody.
This audio may have contained the personal testimonials of some Optavia coaches or clients of Optavia. The results relayed in these messages are based on the unique experiences of the participants, and we cannot guarantee like or similar outcomes. While you may be inspired by these accounts, please note that any stories of success have not been verified, and your individual path to optimal health will vary. As always, it is our recommendation that you consult with a healthcare provider before starting a weight loss program. Yours in health, the Optavia team.